There's a brand new Midjourney competitor that is crazy legit. You now have the ability to create virtual productions in Unreal Engine on your cell phone. And there's a new AI 3D model generator that can create 3D models in less than a second. Welcome to your AI film news of the week. We're going to kick things off by talking about the image generator that everyone is excited about, and I am, of course, talking about Flux. Flux is developed by the team behind Stable Diffusion. They essentially split off and created a new company called Black Forest Labs. Now, this image generation tool is really interesting for multiple reasons. The first being the fact that it's really good, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the second reason is the fact that they have a ton of backing. They've raised over $31 million, and they have Michael Ovitz, who is the founder of CAA, on as a board member and advisor. So they have a lot of people with industry knowledge that are guiding them through the creation of this tool. So you may be asking, how is the quality of this tool? Well, long story short, the quality is really darn good. Some of the generations that we've gotten from Flux are some of the better images that we've seen up to this point. Now, there's 3 different versions of Flux that you should know about. The first version is called Schnell. It's basically the open source model that you can download to your machine and run it locally, kind of similar to Stable Diffusion. The quality is really good in Schnell, but that is not the maximum quality that you can get. The next option is the Dev option, which, as the name implies, is for developers. And the third option is the Pro version, which can be run on certain websites online. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But let's go ahead and compare these 3 versions. I prompted in a cinematic still of a woman in a sci-fi film holding a futuristic battle axe. And this is the version from Schnell. And I gotta say, I don't think this is a battle axe as much as a awkward battle shovel, which is still really cool, but not what I was looking for. The next version is Dev, and this is the image result that I got, and the quality is really, really nice. So I think it did a good job with this image, and you can notice that her fingers look like normal fingers. So props to Flux. And the final version is the Pro version, and we got this image here. And I think the proportions look the best inside of this image. The background bokeh looks really good, and love the way the battle axe looks. Looks like a really cool kind of, I don't know, like this dystopian but also futuristic battle axe. Very cool stuff. Now, the reason why Flux is really good as an image generator is the fact that there are less sensors. So this is less about naughty images and more about working with genres. So for example, if you want to create an image that's in a horror genre, and you use a traditional image tool like Midjourney or even DALL-E, you will more than likely get a rejection whenever you type in certain prompts. But if you want to have a scary image or you want to have, let's say, some blood in there, it helps you to tell your story, but the image generators won't let you. The same is not true with Flux. And the other reason why Flux is really awesome is the fact that it's really good at adhering to prompts. So you can type in a really complex prompt and it will do a pretty good job at following it. So let's stop talking about it and do a quick demo. So there's quite a few different ways that you can use this tool. One is to, of course, you can download the open source model and use it on your computer. That's more complex. We're not going to talk about it. The next option is to use FreePic, which is an online platform. Basically, they've integrated Flux into their platform. Highly recommend checking that out if you're looking for just a quick option. The third option is to use Replicate, which is an online platform. All you have to do is sign in with a GitHub account. And the fourth option that I'm going to show you right now is with Fall.ai. It's very similar to the Replicate option, but there's a few more settings that basically give you more customization. So you'll find a link to the Fall.ai Flux Pro version below this video. Make sure you're in the Pro version. A few of the links going around are to the Dev version and the Schnell version. You don't want those. You want the Pro version. Now, to sign in, all you have to do is sign in with a GitHub account, which is completely free. And then you'll need to put in credit card information. It costs about a nickel per image that you generate. So depending on how many images that you generate day in and day out, it could get more expensive or just only a few cents. So we're inside of the tool here, and prompting can be as simple as typing in whatever you want. So we could say a dog at the park, and we can go ahead and run this. And there you go, we have our image of a dog at the park, and you can see it actually looks pretty darn good. But we want to customize a lot more things. That's where this more button comes into play. So you have the ability to adjust the aspect ratio, which is important. They have presets here, which is similar to Midjourney, but you can also go in and customize the size to a very specific aspect ratio. So it's a little deceiving because it seems like you can just type in whatever resolution you want, like let's do 5,000 by 4,000 or something like that. That's not exactly true. It only can render images up to 2 megabytes large. So even if you type in, let's say, a really, really big image, it's going to crop the edges to be 2 megabytes. So that's not great. The number of inference steps will just be the overall render quality of the overall image. The default works great. The seed is great if you're trying to replicate the image again and again. The guidance scale is really interesting. So if you turn it down, it basically will get more creative and more variability inside of your image. So an image that has a guidance scale lower will be more different than the prompt that you typed in. A guidance scale that is really high will be closer to the prompt that you typed in. So in most cases, you want it to be a little higher rather than lower because you really want it to follow the prompt in the direction that you're typing in. And number of images, you can only do 1 right now. And for safety tolerance, we have a default of 2 that will create checkpoints that are very similar to image generation tools like Midjourney. If you turn it up to 6, that's basically an unfiltered image generation. This is a family-friendly show, so we'll keep it at 2. Okay, I want to stress test Flux, so let's try a few different prompts. First, we're going to say a cinematic still of a woman wearing a yellow shirt. After about 15 seconds, we get this image. We have a woman wearing a yellow shirt, and it is pretty cinematic, so good job there. Now let's take it one step further. We'll say a woman wearing a yellow shirt that says Curious Refuge in downtown Los Angeles. Okay, let's take a look here. And yeah, it says Curious Refuge. I was thinking more on the front of the shirt, but I guess I didn't clarify. So it's still adhered to the prompt. And yeah, it seems like she's walking around downtown Los Angeles. So good job there. And finally, I want to really push it. So I'm going to say a cinematic still of a woman with blue eyes, gray rimmed glasses, yellow shirt that says Curious Refuge in downtown Los Angeles, shot on an IMAX camera, realistic camera grain, and the background is full of people wearing muted colored clothing. And we're going to make sure that our guidance scale is pretty high because we want it to adhere to the prompt as well as possible. So let's go ahead and run the prompt. Okay, let's take a look and see how it did here. So we have this picture of this woman and the shirt says Curious Refuge. She has blue eyes, blonde hair. The people in the background have muted colored clothing. And really, it did an amazing job. I'd say in terms of prompt adherence, Flux is really in a league of its own. So incredible job here. Now, I'm really curious to compare this to Midjourney. So let me go ahead and grab this prompt and we'll paste the same thing into Midjourney. Okay, let's take a look at the results here. So we have option number 1, which, adhered to the prompt, still says Curious Refuge, so not bad. Option number 2, pretty good. Option number 3 and option number 4. Now, one thing that happens inside of Midjourney that I really am not a big fan of is anytime you have specific text, not only is it wrong sometimes, which is normal, but the text sometimes doesn't feel like it lives inside of the image. It's almost like there's a post-processing pass trying to create the text, and the color grading doesn't always look correct. So like the white in this text here looks too bright. Like you want it to be the same as the white levels inside the image, but it's just super bright. The same thing here with the black levels, it's a little too dark. Same thing here. And then if we go back to the first image, it's the same thing. You would expect the black levels to be as black as kind of the darkest parts of the frame, which have a little bit of that blue tint to them. But it seems like the text specifically in Midjourney is a little too dark. So there's definitely some tweaking that can happen inside of Midjourney. So on the announcement page at Black Forest Labs for Flux, They actually said in this chart here that most of the Flux models perform better than most of the other AI video models that are out there. And they have 5 different categories here: prompt following, size and aspect variability, typography, output diversity, and visual quality. And they basically are using those as benchmarks to compare to other tools. However, I feel like this chart is specifically designed to make Flux look as good as possible because it kind of leaves out some very obvious categories that make it more appealing for artists. For example, other categories might include artifacting issues, style consistency, ease of use, iteration, speed, price, accessibility, and having the ability to do advanced things like in-painting. So these 5 categories, while they are interesting, aren't the end-all be-all of judging if an image generator is good. However, I would like to actually do a quick comparison with you in each one of these categories to see which image generation tool is better, Flux or Midjourney. So we'll start from the top and then work our way through, and we'll go super quick. So the first is prompt following. I typed in a fairly complex prompt of a cinematic still of a man wearing a blue sweater with a green stripe in a Danish cafe, drinking tea, raining outside, close-up shot, IMAX camera, soft warm lighting. So a lot of art direction there. So this was our result from Flux. I think it looks pretty good. I mean, it really did take a lot of the direction that I added in. I think the only direction it didn't take was the fact that I did request for a close-up shot. I would classify this more as like a medium close-up, but not too bad, honestly. And the result from Midjourney looks like this. And again, I think it did an amazing job. I did prompt for it to be raining outside, and I'm not really seeing rain. I guess it is a little darker in the window over here, but for the most part, Midjourney did an amazing job. So I think at least when it comes to creating film forward art direction, it seems like it's basically a tie. Next up, we have size and aspect variability. So if we take a look inside of Flux, you can see that under image size, you have the defaults, and then you do have the ability to go in and customize the exact resolution that you're looking for. However, again, the problem is that resolution is super limited. It's not like you can say 6,000 by 4,000. You're really at the mercy of this tool to create images that are less than 2 megabytes. And if we hop over to Midjourney, we can go to settings, and you can see that we have the ability to dial in this slider to basically any aspect ratio we want. Now, I should note that you don't have the ability to get very specific about the specific resolution that you're trying to create, but the images are larger inside of Midjourney, so there's more information, and you can up-res directly in Midjourney. So if you want an image that's really, really big, you can get that from Midjourney. I don't know how you would get that from Flux unless you literally downloaded the Schnell version onto your local machine and rendered it from there. So it seems like, at least when it comes to variability and flexibility, I actually think Midjourney is still a better tool. Next up, we have visual quality. So I said a cinematic still of a man in a blue hat holding a bowl of cereal, standing in a hotel lobby, naturalistic lighting with muted color grading. So here's the image that was generated from Flux. You can see that it really did adhere to the prompt. It looks very realistic. I'd say the hat might be a little too saturated, but honestly, not too bad. And then the image from Midjourney looks like this. And I would say that this does look a little more filmic. Now, in terms of visual quality, I think there's a little bit more fidelity in the Midjourney image, and I didn't even up-res this one. But there's also, I would say, some proportion issues with his hand, unless that's a very, very small bowl of cereal. Seems like it's a little too small in his hands. And then he's wearing like the thickest jacket ever. Like this must be the coldest hotel lobby in the history of hotels. But that being said, I'd say in terms of visual quality, slight edge to Midjourney here, but Flux is in a very, very close second. Next up is diversity. So I'm not only thinking about diversity from a social perspective, but also an aesthetic perspective. So can we get images that are different from each other and not just the same thing again and again? So I typed in a prompt, super generic. I don't think I would normally prompt like this, but I was very curious about what would happen. So I typed in a CEO. So let's take a look at the images from Flux. So we have this image, this image, this image, and this image. You know, in terms of social diversity, kind of the same white guy again and again, but aesthetically, there are some differences in the images that were generated. Next up, we have Midjourney, and inside of Midjourney, we have these 4 images. Now, from a composition standpoint, it does change. And, you know, again, it's kind of a basic white guy. And the overall color grading between these 4 images is basically the same as well. So long story short, Midjourney gives you essentially the same image again and again. However, both of these tools do allow you to get more variability, and the way that you do that is very specific. Inside of Flux, if you want more variability, you just turn down the guidance scale to a lower number, and then you can run these again. Inside of Midjourney, there's a few different things that you can do, but the easiest thing to do is just turn up the variety slider just a little bit, so maybe 50%. So I wanted to test both of these tools with those settings applied. Let's take a look at the results. So from Flux, we have image 1, 2, 3, and 4. These all look pretty good. Now, I would say that aesthetically, they look like they were shot on the same camera, but obviously socially, they are very diverse compared to Midjourney. So if we take a look at the same prompt inside of Midjourney with a variety of 20, these are the image results that we get. And, you know, there's not as much social diversity here, but in terms of image diversity and aesthetic diversity, each one of these shots do look like they were shot on a different camera, and they're just getting us different results. So I would also say in terms of variability, it's basically a tie between Flux and Midjourney. And finally, let's test typography. So I went into the image generators and I typed in, I wanted to see an advertisement for white Air Force Ones with a sign in the background that says summertime, and I wanted it to take place in LA. Here are the 4 results from Flux. Each one of the images created basically the image that we were looking for. The shoes are correct, and there is a sign in the background that says summertime in each one of these images, so great job from Flux. Here was the result from Midjourney, and while each one of these images do have the word summertime in the back, there's some wonkiness going on. For example, this woman is just like, she's not holding the shoe, it's like connected to her body. This person has the shoe on her hand, which is a very interesting ad. This image is good, and this image is good as well. I'm not sure why it all has this kind of light blue color grading to it, so I'd probably want to prompt that out. But, you know, if I'm comparing the images, I'd say that when it came to adhering to both text and art direction at the same time, seems like Flux has a slight edge. So long story short, Flux is a very real and interesting competitor in the AI image market. Now, there are some limitations that make Flux less appealing to you as an artist in its current form. If you're looking at resolution alone, the images from Flux are about 1024 by 576 if you're using a 16:9 format. So you definitely have to use an AI image upscaler like Magnific or Gigapixel if you're working with Flux. Using the Pro online version of Flux, you also can only generate one image at a time. So that's kind of an issue because one of the primary benefits to using AI is the fact that you can iterate again and again and get a ton of variance whenever you are in the creative process. And having to do one image at a time really slows down the process. It's also very challenging, if not impossible, to do character reference and consistent characters in the Pro online version of Flux. Style consistency has been a challenge because you don't have the ability to upload images or push the style in a certain direction outside of just prompting alone. And it's also missing organizational tools, and there are some commercial limitations that would make it potentially challenging if you are working on a large-scale project. So our immediate thoughts at Curious Refuge about Flux are this. Flux is an amazing tool. We really believe that in the next few months, with more iteration, Flux is going to be one of the best image generators that are out there, and they really will force other AI image generators like Midjourney or Leonardo to up their game. However, we really feel like the current version of Flux is really more of a B2B play to get some enterprise conversations going and less a tool for day-to-day artists. While we really appreciate the open source Schnell version of Flux, the overall quality just is not the same as other image generators that are out there. And I should note that if you're using the online Pro version, it does cost a nickel an image, which makes it one of the more expensive AI image generators that are out there. I should also note that Black Forest Labs is also working on a text-to-video platform, and they have this landing page here where they have this television that is really small. There's a lot of grain and reflections on it, so it's kind of hard to get a good idea of what the overall video quality will be like. It seems like it's somewhere close to Runway Gen 3 or Luma's Dream Machine, but it's impossible to tell at this point. We'll be super excited to play around with this tool when it drops. And speaking of Runway, they came out with a new feature this last week that allows you to define the first frame or the last frame of a video that you generate inside of Gen 3. There's some cool examples that we've seen online. For example, this camera shot that basically kind of breaks apart into this diagram. We also have this slightly terrifying video here of a shopping bag and a guy's head falls inside, but it just seemed like it's just like a guy's head. Like it's just distended, like it's like a wax head from somewhere. So yeah, that's interesting. We also have this shot here that looks like it's going through a city and ending on a microchip circuit board, which is interesting. We also have this shot here of a cheeseburger, and then all of these cheeseburger ingredients fall into the frame, which is pretty cool. I don't know what this last bit of food is over here. Is that a sausage or is that meatloaf? And does that go inside of a cheeseburger? Never had a meatloaf cheeseburger. That sounds interesting. And finally, we have the shot here of this like abstract paper, and it lights on fire, and it reveals this like Renaissance angel character. So looks pretty darn cool. Now I want to showcase this tool in action. So to use it, all you have to do is go to the Runway website, go to try Runway, and then we'll get started with Runway Gen 3. So now you need to drag and drop an image. For our example, we'll use this shot of basically a bottle of iced tea and drag and drop it into our prompt window. So now we can define if we want this to be our first frame or our last frame. I think this is our big hero image for our advertisement, so I'm going to say last frame. And for a prompt, we'll say an advertising slow motion shot, a bottle of iced tea rotates with an abstract background. And we'll go ahead and change this to 5 seconds, and we can generate it a few times. So let's take a look at a few of our results here. So here's option number 1. Looks like a pretty good hero shot here, not too shabby. We have option number 2 here. I love the rotation on the bottle. It's just like spinning. It looks like a really good like display advertisement. And we have number 3 here, which looks pretty good. Honestly, if that was at the end of a commercial, I probably wouldn't think too much about it. So obviously the quality that we're getting directly from Runway could definitely be improved. So I'm gonna run all of these through the Rhea model inside of Topaz Video AI. If you're not familiar with that workflow, we have a tutorial about using Runway Gen 3 that goes into that entire process. You can check that out in the link below this video. And here is the result. And I gotta say, each one of these shots look absolutely incredible. Like this spinning shot here looks really, really nice. We also have this shot here. There's just so many crisp details. It looks really, really good. So I did notice something interesting with the Runway generations, especially when I scaled them up. So if you take a look at the video here, about 2 to 3 times per second, there's a slight stutter in the overall video that is generated. And the best place to look is kind of in the top of the bottle cap here. You can see that there's kind of this jitter. And if you take a look at any Runway footage, it always has just that little jitter to it. So it's something to do with the way that Runway is generating the video. There's just slight variability there. Now this is kind of splitting hairs compared to where we were just a few months ago because the quality is absolutely amazing, but it is just worth noting. So keep your eyes out for that if you're working on a professional project. In Hollywood news, the team at Meta is actually reaching out to a ton of AI celebrities to basically use their voice for essentially an upcoming AI avatar project. So think about being able to talk with Awkwafina or Judi Dench or Keegan-Michael Key, directly using a Meta platform. Allegedly, these deals are going for millions of dollars, so I imagine we will more than likely have an AI assistant very soon that has a celebrity voice, and I'm not talking about that canceled Scarlett Johansson model from OpenAI. We also came across a really interesting demo that's not inherently filmmaking related, although it could be used in the production and planning process. Basically, if you use Claude, you now have the ability to upload a spreadsheet and create a custom viewable dashboard from that spreadsheet. And it's kind of similar to a website. You can change filters and you can select just various aspects of the data as if you developed a very custom reporting tool. So it's really incredible, and I think it just showcases some of the potential of using AI to visualize data. The team at Domo also came out with version 2 of their Move feature, which basically has better quality, better consistency. If you're not familiar with Domo, it basically allows you to upload a video and then take an image. Typically it works best with like anime quality, and then you can essentially animate that anime character using the underlying video. Of course, they mainly do TikTok videos, but I think this type of automatic animation to motion tracking tool showcases kind of the future of animation in the coming years. There's also a new tool called Skyglass that allows you to do virtual productions from your iPhone. Now, the quality is not perfect, but I think it does kind of showcase how easy it is to do these virtual productions using modern technology. Now, let's do a quick little demo. It's an app in the App Store that you can download. So let's take a look at the app. So as you can see, I'm inside of Skyglass. It's super easy to use. And basically, as I move around, you can see that it motion tracks me into the scene. Now, the lighting is not perfect. We'll get to that in just a second. But they do have different options that are available to you. So they have all sorts of Unreal Engine scenes that you can download and basically put yourself in different worlds. If you see this little light bulb button, it basically is an indicator that that scene allows you to do AI relighting. So I did a quick little test earlier. Let's take a look at some of the results here. So here is basically me talking inside an empty room. You can see that it's just iPhone footage basically. But in real time, it converted it into this footage. Now, it's not perfect. There's very clearly some issues that are happening when it comes to the keying, which we'll actually get to a little bit later in this video. But it, did a pretty good job with the actual motion tracking. I think that's one of the most appealing reasons to use an iPhone on an actual film production set, aside from, taking reference photography and using it for, VFX plates and things like that. Also using it for motion tracking camera movement is incredibly interesting. Now, they have this AI relighting tool inside of the application, and it's kind of hilarious. I mean, first off, it actually is pretty impressive that it kind of understands where the lighting is coming from, but it also kind of turns your face into a video game character. There's like a lot of post-processing that is happening. But again, I think it kind of does showcase where the future of video conversion might be. Being able to be inside a video editing application like DaVinci Resolve and relighting in a realistic way has been around for a little while, but AI tools are increasingly going to make it easier to relight and develop your scene further in post. I definitely recommend checking out Skyglass. It's a little expensive for what you get at the moment, but it's definitely fun to play around with. We're also hosting an AI advertising competition next week. The winner will get thousands of dollars. You can subscribe to our email list over at curiousrefuge.com, and you will be the first to know when the competition drops. The team at Meshy also came out with the ability to do hard surface 3D models inside of their tool. So if you're not familiar with Meshy, it's basically an AI tool. It allows you to upload an image and then it creates a 3D model from there. Let me show you a quick example. So I have this image here of this 3D mech robot, and all you have to do is just drag and drop it into Meshy. They give you some free credits for signing up, so you don't have to pay anything. So we have this image of our robot here, and we have hard surface mode or organic. You can go ahead and click generate. I generated both versions earlier, so here is our organic robot, and you can see that it's very, very rounded around the edges. So, designed for organic surfaces, but this is non-organic, so it's not the best. And the hard surface model looks like this. You can see that it looks pretty good. I mean, there's quite a bit of fidelity here. Now, zoomed into the wrong part there. You can see that there's quite a bit of resolution and it looks pretty good. Now, it's not animation or game ready just yet, but the quality is pretty darn good. You would then take this model and clean it up inside of a 3D application. But I think it's incredible to think that just a year ago, we were seeing some very rudimentary 3D models, and now we have some pretty incredible models. I would say within 1 to 2 years, the 3D models that we get from 3D applications like this will look just as good as the ones that were modeled over hours and hours. And speaking of 3D models, there's a few white papers that I want you to check out this week. The first is called Stable Fast 3D. It's basically a very quick 3D modeling tool from the folks at Stability AI. They have this great animation that basically showcases these 3D models being generated and pushed into this vortex down here, which is kind of delightful. I feel like I could just watch this all day. Again, the quality is not perfect at this point, but it's pretty darn good, and this is just the beginning. We're beginning to see turbo modes when it comes to 3D model generation, and the speed and the quality will only improve. Our final white paper today comes from Skyglass 2024. It's called Matting by Generation. Essentially, it's like rotoscoping that uses AI to basically do a better job. So there's some pretty interesting examples over on the website. So this is our original image on the left. We have a traditional green screen or matting process here, and then a matting process using their tool here. So let's zoom into the hair parts here, because that's always the hardest part. And you can see that in a traditional process, it kind of cut it off, and it did not do a great job. Whereas using this new generative method, it actually did a great job. There's tons of fidelity in each one of the hair strands. And if you take a look at the image here, it looks like it was shot on this light green background. So it did an amazing job. Rotoscoping is one of the most tedious and annoying tasks in a post-production pipeline. And so seeing generative tools like this that do an incredible job with either matting or rotoscoping is incredibly interesting. And that brings us to our AI films of the week. Our first film comes from Dave Clark, who is an instructor at Curious Refuge. He basically put a trailer concept together for a film he's developing that's basically about moon vampires. And some of the shots are really incredible. He really blends some interesting tools. It looks like he's using Hedra and Runway Gen 3 to create some of the videos. And it looks really, really good. The second film I want to show you is called Nexus 1945 by Resemblance AI. It's a really wonderful concept about basically aliens landing in World War II, and they used some really dynamic movements that look like they're different than Runway Gen 3. I think they went in and actually rotoscoped the scenes and kind of animated them by hand using either depth maps or some sort of 3D parallaxing technique. I think this concept is really interesting for multiple reasons. The first is it's awesome. It looks great and they did a great job with the execution. But the second is the fact that it's really resonating with audiences. A lot of people in the comments have said they want it to be a TV series, that it's better than any movie they've seen recently, or that they wish it exists in many forms of media. And I think that this type of concept really showcases what might be the future of pitching. Basically, you can pitch a concept to the greater world and get buy-in of people that want to either fund your film, or you can prove that an idea is resonating with people to convince investors or producers to come in to help you produce the project. And our final film of the week is called The Legend of the Odd Mirror by Alor. Basically, it's this concept of a kid that saves the world using ancient monsters. There's some really dynamic camera movements, and it looks like they also used AI to do some translation, which was really interesting. So I think they did an amazing job with this project. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of AI Film News. There was a lot of really interesting things to get to. Of course, if you want AI Film News sent directly to your inbox, you can subscribe by going to curiousrefuge.com, and you'll get a free AI filmmaking course for signing up. And if you want to get more tutorials or film news directly here on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and best of luck on all of your projects.